Welcome back to Good Revenue. Today's episode is a little different. We're going to dive into some top news stories that may or may not be on your radar, but they're important and they sit at the intersection of tech, business, and really what it means to be a human. So I think they're pretty important. You can find links to everything we talk about in the show notes, as always. First story we wanted to get into today. Turns out that AI stealing your copyrighted work is not, in fact, fair use. Thomson Reuters just won a landmark case against a company called Ross Intelligence in mid-February. The verdict? AI companies can't use copyrighted materials for training without permission. Ross Intelligence built an AI legal search engine using Westlaw's content. That's a platform owned by Thomson Reuters. And they claimed fair use because they were basically scraping Westlaw's information and trying to regenerate it in their own tool. Fair use is a legal doctrine that permits limited use of copyrighted materials without the consent of the copyright owner. It's based on specific factors like criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research. Only portions of a copyrighted work can actually be used, not the entire work. Fair use is determined on a case-by-case basis. So this is an interesting ruling because the U.S. District Court disagreed with Ross Intelligence. The judge said that Ross created a market substitute, essentially competing with the very content they were copying. The consequences of this were severe even before the decision. Ross actually shut down in 2021 from the costs of this lawsuit. Now, separate from this case, some media outlets have negotiated with OpenAI about copyright infringement, while a group of prominent companies, including the New York Times, are suing OpenAI over copyright infringement. While this decision leaves several critical questions unaddressed, according to legal experts, it potentially establishes a precedent with far-reaching implications for generative AI companies, many of which rely heavily or exclusively on copyrighted materials to train their models. This is sure to be a top topic for companies in tech and beyond. DeepSeek's data drama continues. Breaking news from South Korea this month, Chinese AI startup DeepSeek allegedly shared user data with ByteDance. That's the parent company of TikTok. South Korea's PIPC agency confirmed the DeepSeek ByteDance communication, but they haven't determined the extent of data sharing. Nonetheless, they pulled the app down in South Korea after 1 million people had already downloaded it. This echoes broader concerns about China's national intelligence law and global data privacy. If it sounds familiar, it's very similar to why the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the ban on TikTok, which was overwhelmingly passed by the United States Congress in 2024. That decision has been paused until April 5th. These questions are clearly not going away. AI-driven cyber attacks increased significantly in 2024, and according to CISA and the FBI, Chinese infiltration of U.S. telecom networks continues to be a really serious concern. Federal officials said that networks had not fully removed this threat as of the end of 2024. This is a really complicated issue, and regardless of what happens with TikTok or DeepSeek, I suspect we'll have more questions than answers in the near term. Our third topic is actually 2 stories and some additional data for your consideration. 2 top stories from February paint a stark picture of today's startup landscape. First from Bloomberg, zombie unicorns are everywhere. There are 1,200 venture-backed companies worth over $1 billion that can't exit and can't raise new funds, according to CB Insights. That's over $1 trillion locked up in struggling startups, according to a professor at Stanford's Business School. The numbers tell the story. Of 354 companies hitting billion-dollar valuations in 2021, just 6 have IPO'd and 4 used SPACs. 10 of those companies were also acquired, but often below unicorn status. Carta also reports fewer than 30% of 2021's unicorns raised money recently. Half took major valuation cuts. Indoor farming company Bowery Farming, AI healthcare startup Forward Health, and freight logistics company Convoy have all collapsed, with some of those assets being acquired at steep discounts. Here's the twist. As zombie unicorns struggle, AI-native ponies are crushing it. They're growing fast and showing strong profits as well as sustainable growth with a new model that may fundamentally change the economics of startups. The New York Times reported this week about Gamma AI, an AI-native startup with just 28 employees and 50 million users that's reporting tens of millions of dollars in revenue. Before the AI boom, startups typically burned $1 million to reach $1 million in revenue. According to research from one of the VCs that invested in Gamma AI, after studying 200 companies, reaching that milestone costs a fifth as much, and they expect it to drop to as little as a tenth of the cost. This shift is creating a new metric for success. Instead of headcount and fundraising, the focus is now on revenue generation with minimal staffing. The takeaway? That's great news for ponies and their investors, and really bad for the unicorns and their investors, because a lot of these firms have way too many duds on their hands and no serious plans to retool the business models, aside from across-the-board cuts, which have not been successful in revitalizing the underlying business. Some additional data points you may want to consider from sources outside of these articles. First, PitchBook reported record highs for Series D down rounds. They said that 25.7% of all VC deals in 2024 were down rounds. This is up from 2021, which corresponds with the rise in interest rates. Another item that we have discussed previously on the podcast, in December, Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, suggested that AI could replace traditional business logic in SaaS applications, potentially consolidating back-end systems. This raises interesting questions about the economics of SaaS models, both in startups and in public companies. Just this past week, Nadella acknowledged on another podcast that AI isn't currently generating value, which has raised eyebrows everywhere. He doesn't believe that AI will be a winner-take-all model, and he called AGI milestones nonsense. He also said that the real benchmark is if the world economy grows 10% due to AI, because in his view, supply side doesn't matter if the demand isn't there. It's not about the race to building the model, it's about the business. All of this is with a backdrop of a new administration in the United States focused on unfettered AI, which raises questions about data, privacy, security, energy use, and other important topics. Our final topic. New research from Gallup reveals the leadership needs of 52,000 people across 52 countries. Here's what influences us. 3 in 5 respondents chose loved ones as their top leadership influence. 57% chose a family member, while another 8% chose friends or another loved one. Workplace leaders were 11%, while organizational leaders were 5%. Political and religious leaders were 7% each, and celebrities were just 2%. People in China, Germany, and the UAE were more likely to name workplace leaders as their top leadership influences, while respondents in the Middle East, North Africa, and Eastern Europe typically identified family members. Respondents revealed 4 core needs. Hope was the most valued attribute, followed by trust, compassion, and stability across all cultures. I find this research really fascinating. Our world is changing faster than ever. It's caused a lot of disorientation and confusion for many of us. And yet, at the same time, our basic needs for connection, inspiration, and guidance remain unchanged. We are all the same. We need something to look forward to and someone to look up to. It's been a challenging start to the year for many people, and I really hope that things improve. Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, leave us a review, subscribe to the show, or check out another episode. We appreciate your support.